Nagarjuna is undisputedly the most important Buddhist thinker in classical India since Gautama Siddhartha himself. However, he was not alone in the establishment of the Madhyamaka or Middle Way school, with which he has been most commonly associated. One of the most important thinkers who was involved in the development of the school was someone by the name of Aryadeva. Aryadeva's biographic details vary depending on the source, but it is tradition that he descended from Sri Lankan royalty. As a prince, he rejected his birthright and instead took up the cloth as a member of the Sangha, mastering the Tripitaka of the Pali Canon as well as the philosophical teachings of the non-Buddhist schools. After attaining some level of expertise, he left his island home to travel the holy sites of India, which is where he was supposed to have encountered Nagarjuna and become his disciple. After many travels and learning, he eventually was reputed to have been invited to the Buddhist center of Nalanda, which 2 centuries later would be founded as a Mahavihara or Great Monastery, and acted as a center of learning in Buddhist and Indian philosophy. Aryadeva is most famous for his work, The 400 Stanzas. This is a text which is nominally a commentary on Nagarjuna's treatise on the Middle Way, explaining the paths associated with conventional truths. By conventional truth, here we're referring to the Madhyamaka doctrine of 2 truths, one conventional and the other ultimate. The conventional truth, according to Madhyamaka, is shunyata or emptiness. This is the idea that all phenomena are dependent and void of any permanent essence. The ultimate truth is a point of contention between Buddhist philosophers and theologians. However, Nagarjuna's own view was that the ultimate truth is that there was no ultimate truth, that the concept of shunyata was, in and of itself, empty or void. According to Aryadeva, practitioners of Buddhism must eliminate not only obstructions to liberation, but also obstructions to the perfect knowledge of all phenomena. This requires a thorough understanding of selflessness, coupled with a vast accumulation of merit or positive energy, resulting from the compassion demonstrated by bodhisattvas. The first 100 of the 400 verses deals with the 4 illusions that must be overcome to achieve liberation from the root cause of dissatisfaction. The 4 illusions are the beliefs that there are permanent things in the world that escape destruction, that impermanent things can provide true satisfaction, that satisfaction can be derived from intrinsically impure things, and that satisfaction can be attained by being preoccupied with oneself. These are fairly common themes, found both in Nagarjuna and earliest Buddhist writers' thinking. However, Aryadeva then goes on the attack against the doctrines of the Brahminical schools, Jainism, and the Buddhist scholastics, forerunners of the Theravada movement. Aryadeva focused the brunt of his arguments against what he saw as the absurdity of these opponents' doctrines. In a negative argument, he attacks the differing positions that hold onto ideas such as the permanence of the self, which doesn't change, for example, the Atman of Brahminical teaching. He observes that since a permanent self could not undergo change, it could not be harmed or destroyed, and therefore it is inconsistent for those to believe in such a self to promote ethical guidelines against killing or harming others. However, Aryadeva, in the tradition of the Madhyamaka, avoids positing his own view, instead focusing on deconstructing the argument of his opponents. He says himself in the 400 stanzas that attachment to one's own view and disparaging the view of others is an obstacle to nirvana, and tranquility is impossible for those who engage in doctrinal disputes. As such, the goal of the work is to break our habit of firmly holding onto any tenets, rather than establishing another position which would in itself be empty. One of the most powerful tools in this deconstruction is the use of the quadralemma, a tool familiar to Nagarjuna and other Buddhist writers. Here the author rejects a position, rejects the negation of the position, rejects the possibility of both the position and its negation, and finally rejects the impossibility of the position as negation. An excellent example of this is the argument as to whether a pot is a single entity or many. One cannot say that a pot is single, for it has many characteristics, such as color, shape, hardness, odor, and so forth. It can also not be said that a pot has many pots, because none of the individual characteristics is a pot. It cannot be said that the pot is a single whole with many characteristics, because some of the components are material and therefore capable of contact and location, while others, such as color and odor, are immaterial and have no location. It makes no sense to say that these characteristics, that they have contrary natures, form a coherent whole. And yet, to deny that a pot is either one or many is to deny that it exists at all, for an existent thing must either have a property or an absence of that property. Although not as important or well known as his teacher, Aryadeva remains an important figure in understanding the developments in Tibetan and Chinese Buddhism. The 400 verses was so important that it went on to become one of the 3 basic texts of the Chinese Madhyamaka school, itself vitally important to understanding the development of East Asian Buddhism.